right.
Are you ready for some football?
A Monday night party.
A Monday night party.
See, yeah, the microphone's working for sure now. But here we are.
We're in the new media room, and that's why our energy is just a little bit higher.
A little different.
If you are listening to this in an audio medium, let me paint you a pretty little picture.
Please do.
Imagine a room in an office. However, this office and this room are very nice. There is exposed brick. There are jerseys hanging on the wall. There is a nice frosty glass window we are looking at.
I feel
we
like
are
I'm
in
there.
comfy chairs.
Yep.
And we're here recording this episode, which who would have thought? Who would have thought?
Not us.
Not us.
But here we are nonetheless. Another episode for Love of Sport.
All right, everyone, welcome to another episode of For the Love of Sports. We are excited to be here. We are excited about our guests that we have on. We are excited about being in this fun room.
Yes. Can I also mention that I feel like I should have thought more in advance that we were doing a video medium moving forward here in 2024 before I dyed my hair bleach blonde for Halloween.
Wait. Oh, yeah, sure enough.
Yeah.
He's got blonde hair.
This is not a bit. For those listening, it's weird.
It is different. I wouldn't say weird. It's different.
It's different.
And so what's the plan with the hair?
We're going to
ride it out.
Bringing back frosted tips. That's what we're doing.
So he's going to ride it out. So I think it'll be like frosted tip watch.
Oh, yeah.
We'll bring you guys live updates every episode about where we're at.
Yes,
with the
that's what you want to see.
Because if that's not why you press play on this episode, then I'm not sure why, because that's the content you're going to be getting. No, just kidding. You're not. You're going to be getting awesome people
Us
again,
here. Yeah.
which we have today on the show.
We do have today on the show.
This was 100% Simon. Simon got this guy. Huge get.
Yeah, one of those random things where you just reach out on a hope and a prayer and just hope that they read the email and that it resonates with them. And sure enough, it did. And from just the boundless enthusiasm this person has during the Olympics, and potentially because he's also a 3-time gold medalist. And I mean, just a small detail.
Yeah.
And really doesn't need an introduction, but we did write one. So
we'll read it.
We'll read it. But dear listeners, Rowdy Gaines. All right, everybody, put on the cap and the goggles. Today, we have a true legend in the world of swimming with us with Rowdy Gaines. Rowdy is not just a name in swimming, he is an icon. As a 3-time Olympic gold medalist, he's conquered the water like so many others, setting records and making history. But Rowdy's contributions to the world of sports don't stop at his impressive medals or swimming feats. He's also a renowned broadcaster, really just the voice of swimming, if we just want to name it, bringing the excitement from the swimming pool to millions of viewers worldwide. With his infectious enthusiasm, deep knowledge, and engaging storytelling, he's beloved in the sport of swimming and a figure in sports commentary. Off the pool deck, Rowdy is a dedicated advocate for youth sports, emphasizing the importance of swimming and its positive impact of young athletes, helping really the mission of youth sports. And then it really just aligns perfectly with our own mission here. And with all that said, and much more to be said, Rowdy, welcome to the For the Love of Sport podcast.
Thank you, buddy. Good to be with you. Good to be with you, my man.
Absolutely. And I do want to take a moment here to just kind of calm my heart rate down after you called me buddy, just because that's a huge moment for me. So I appreciate that.
We'll remember this. We'll remember this.
Yes. Rowdy, we have a whole slew of questions that we want to ask you, but I think the first and foremost is the one that unites all of us together is our shared experience of youth sports and its impact. And I'm wondering if you can just let us know about your own experience playing sports as a kid.
So, Simon, my story is a little different. As a kid, I grew up playing all sports. Typical kid in the 60s and 70s where I did football, baseball, basketball, everything that just went around. We didn't have soccer, so there was no soccer, but I was pretty much obsessed with sports. And I grew up in Florida, so we did a lot of water sports. Water skiing. My parents water skied for a place called Cypress Gardens. So I grew up water skiing, and I grew up swimming my whole life. We lived on a lake. I learned how to swim before I learned how to walk. Literally, I was like 9 months old. But I didn't really start swimming competitively until high school. I swam a couple summers on like a little age group country club type league, but didn't really start until I was 17. And that's only because by the time you get to high school, unlike most youth sports, at least the youth sports that I was a part of, we everybody made the team. But in high school, in my high school, if you weren't good enough, you got cut. So I played football, baseball, basketball, golf, tennis. I played them all, or at least I tried out for them all, but I got cut in all of them.
No.
I bet they're looking back on that thinking, wish we wouldn't have cut him. Seems to be a pretty good athlete.
Yeah.
Now what? I stunk at everything. I mean, I love sports. I really do. And I did, and I still do. I watch sports all the time, and I like all sports. It doesn't matter if there's a sport on TV. I love watching, and I love playing sports, but I wasn't very good at anything. And that's why I got cut. But once I went out for swimming, things just changed. It was kind of a slow process to start, real slow. But I certainly started falling in love with the sport.
I was going to say that might resonate a little bit more with some potential athletes maybe in the car on the way to practice. It's so, like getting cut doesn't mean that you're done with sports. Maybe it's just like you got to find the right one. And then, I mean, I feel like Maria and I, you've both been cut from some teams, and while it can hurt, it just means it's fine. It just means I need to either work harder or maybe find a sport that I like a little bit better. But so I'm glad that you had a multitude, an array of different sports that you played. I guess what made swimming stick?
Well, I think a lot of it's part of my DNA. Again, I was born and raised in Florida. My dad was born and raised in Florida. My grandfather was pretty much raised in Florida. It's part of who I am. It's part of the fabric of what my being is, without sounding too corny. Is just I love the water, and I've always loved the water. I've always loved being in the water more than I love being on land. I just never thought of it as something that is competitive. I always thought of it as a kind of a recreational kind of thing that you did growing up. But really, it wasn't anything that was just kind of mind-blowing. I'm going to be a swimmer and I'm going to go to the Olympics. It was just because I had just gotten cut in tennis, and swimming was just the next sport in line. Like I said, in my high school, we started as a sophomore, not ninth grade. Ninth grade was still middle school. So the beginning of my sophomore years when I started trying out for all these sports, and 5 sports, as I said, over 2 years, over about a year and a half period. And the middle of my junior year, after I got cut in tennis, I just said, well, here's swimming. Maybe I'll just do that. And I had a friend of mine who I was kind of helping. He wanted to try out for swimming. And I just said, I'll give this a try and see what happens.
I am curious, and obviously over the last X amount of years, the swimming that Simon and I probably grew up watching, it's just been huge, right? The Olympic movement. I think we're going to start talking about that a little bit later. But when you were growing up, you kind of mentioned it of you never really thought of swimming as a competitive thing or really as like a career, really. I'm assuming when you were probably just swimming in high school, that probably didn't register to you. When did that click, or did you have coaches and mentors in your life that kind of were, hey, this could really be something if you dedicate yourself to it? What did that look like?
Yeah.
Not growing up so much. I mean, I had great little league coaches that were very inspiring. I never had any kind of traumatic experience from sports. I had great mentors in little league and stuff. But when I got to high school, it's funny. It's kind of a funny story in the fact that when I went out for swimming, getting to your question, the football coach was also the swim coach. He moonlighted as the swim coach. And the dude had already cut me once, right? So I was thinking, oh, man, I'm never great. This is just wonderful. This guy's already cut me. But we both learned a lot about the sport together. He had only coached swimming for 1 year. He didn't know much about it. I certainly didn't know anything about it. But so we kind of took this journey my junior and senior year together. We started learning together about it. I remember going to the library and checking out every book possible on the sport. I just immersed myself in the sport. And I remember reading Mark Spitz's book called The 50-Meter Jungle. I read Don Scholander, another great Olympic champion's book called Deep Water. And
Wow.
and just kind of said, once I didn't get cut, I said, this is what I really want to do. Again, no aspirations to be an Olympian, but I really wanted to try to flourish in the sport as a high schooler and maybe have this in the back of my mind that maybe I could earn a scholarship to college. But getting to your question again, my coach really helped me a lot in this journey for those 2 years. I think once he realized he wasn't going to cut me and realized, I said, holy crap, this guy's pretty good, And
Yeah.
I was a good kid and I wanted to work hard. He appreciated that. And so he helped me along.
I wanted to ask you too, as we sort of like progress from youth to college and then to the Olympics, I'm curious about if there's any lesson from those early swimming days that has stuck with you all the way through that career, like from college to even like in the Olympics. Anything from those days you just like sticks in the back of your head?
Yeah. Gosh, that's a great question. I think some of the lessons that I learned early on that have kind of stuck is never be afraid to keep learning. I think that's one thing that my coach and a lot of my peers, my family kind of taught me early on is once you fall in love with something, don't ever be afraid to keep learning about it. And I know that again sounds a little bit cliche-ish, but I think that's what I really took to heart when I first started swimming and realized that this was the sport that was going to become my passion.
Yeah.
That I just wanted to learn so much about it. I'm a real lover of the history of our sport. So I started checking out all these Guinness Book of World Records. And again, this is back when there was no internet, obviously. So you had to go to the library to do all this. But I really loved, and I still do, I love the history of our sport and our forefathers, quote unquote, that did so much before us and appreciated all what I just got through reading a great book called The Waterman that was a book about kind of the very first American star in swimming back in 1900 and kind of what they went through. I go way back to the beginnings of the sport. And so I think that was one lesson that I really tried to take to heart. And the other one and I still try to preach this, it goes back to the passion side, is I don't think you can be any good at anything you want to do unless you love it. Unless you have a real passion for it, it ain't gonna work. Short term, yeah. But long term, if you want to have a career in this, again, I'm just speaking about swimming, but I think it applies to anything. I think consistently you have to have a passion for it. Not all the time. There were many days I hated swimming, trust me, hated it. But I consistently loved the sport and the values and the lessons it taught me. And I think that was one thing I learned early on is I didn't really like the process of swimming. I didn't like pain. I'm not a big believer in pain, but I love the feeling of after I finished.
Yeah.
And the feeling of accomplishment, even if you had a crummy workout. That's the feeling I craved, and that's the feeling of the passion behind why I love swimming so much.
I did just hear, and you saying that just sparked in my mind. I don't really know what it was. Probably to the effect of someone like needing to commit to continuing to work out and do all this stuff. And they were, of course, maybe not nobody. Some people enjoy the art of actually the pain of like working out, getting up early, driving when it's cold out. Some people like that, but most people hate that. What they love is when the workout's done and you're sitting at home after you've showered and you're like, yeah, I feel so good about myself. I got that done. And I feel like that resonates with your story of like, yeah, at times, certainly I had a lot of friends who swam, and a lot of times you're up at 5 a.m. and in a freezing cold pool. That's probably not a ton of fun, but afterwards you probably feel insanely accomplished. So
you're so right. You're spot on. I do know people that you're right. I do know people that like that process, that like the pain. Katie Ledecky.
That's Simon, I think.
Right? Katie Ledecky is the perfect. She loves it. She loves the feeling of the
The
pain and
grind.
getting up and the whole process. And I just never liked it. But boy, I was addicted to what it felt like after it was all done. And that's what kind of got me through that pain and that feeling of, man, I just got to get through this because I know it's going to feel good at the end.
Absolutely.
But that spurred my passion. But there are people that like that process for sure. They're nuts, but they are out there.
I think it's a nice reminder to everyone out there where I think we hear so often of like trusting the process and fall in love with the process. And it's nice to get some realistic views here of, there is a process to it. You're not going to love it all the time, but you can trust in it. You don't have to romanticize the process, but you can definitely trust the fact that I'm going to do these things in the right way and it's going to lead to the right results that I want to get to. And there's going to be days where it sucks, but then at the end of it, I get that nice little boost of just endorphins that make everything a whole lot better. There's few better feelings than a post-workout and a post competitive race, even if you don't win, where you're just exhausted, but it's just like that good feeling of I gave everything I possibly could out there. That's a great feeling. I'm curious about a lot of things. I say that a lot, but I wanted to ask you just about the Olympic experience. And I think there's always the dream of getting to that pinnacle, right? Of getting to that stage. I wonder if you can talk to me about the first time you got to step on that stage and what that felt like, and then feeling of winning too.
Well, for me, it was a little different in the fact that I first tasted that experience of being an Olympian in 1980.
Yeah.
And of course, we didn't go. And I'm sure most of your listeners are way too young to remember 1980 and know that there was a boycott in that year and our country did not participate in the Olympics. So I was 21 years old. I was young and didn't really understand what I was missing. When I missed the Olympics, I'd never been, so it wasn't I certainly wanted to go, but it wasn't like this huge dream of what an Olympics. I just figured, okay, well then I guess I'll face tomorrow. But as time went on, I realized how important that dream is for that level. We don't have a World Series or Super Bowl. It's the Olympics. That's the pinnacle of our success. And that only happens every 4 years. So imagine the Super Bowl being played every 4 years. That's sort of like is for us. The World Cup in soccer is kind of the best example of that on a world stage. It's such a big deal, but it's every 4 years, right? So 1984, to have that feeling of being a true Olympian and not necessarily a ghost Olympian was really special. But I always go back to 1980 and realize that there were, I think, 363 athletes that made the Olympic team in 1980 that did not make it in 76 and did not make it in 1984. And to me, those are the real heroes. And the fact that it was their only Olympic team and they missed out on it. And I really feel for them. And in 1984, I kind of dedicated my ability to swim in those Olympic Games to all those amazing athletes that made it in 80. And I still think about them all the time, even though I was one of them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, of course, so fortunate for you to be able to kind of have that redemption and go back. But to your point, there are so many sports that are that same way, that every 4 years is their time to shine. That's the pinnacle. And you work your theoretically your whole life to get there. And to come up short like that is unfortunate for sure. But that's really cool that you kind of took that stance and dedicated that and continue to think about it even to this day. Yeah,
it was a different time too. Politically, we were going through a time of the Reagan era where USA, the Russians were the evil empire. And to have that moment for me in the United States to compete in an Olympic Games in my home country made it even more special. And to be able to have, I've always said, I won 3 gold medals. I gave one to my mom, one to my dad, and one to my coach. I had not met my wife yet, or she would have gotten that 4th one for sure. But I wish I could have won 40 of them because I would have given one to each one of my teammates on that 1984 team, because it really was a true team in every sense of the word, even though people think of swimming as such an individual sport. Yeah, I try to tell kids all the time, swimming is very much a team sport. Relays, obviously, are a big part of that.
Yeah.
But my fondest memories, guys, of my little league days and my youth days, my high school swimming days are not times and performances. My fondest memories of everything, at least the most vivid memories, were just hanging out with my friends, the social aspect of what sports presented to me. And those are the memories that I have that I think are created, and certainly in youth sports, and carry on all the way through.
I love that. You're in good company, because I know that's something that a lot of, if not every single one of the guests that we've had on that had played sports and talked about here on the show is a great unifier of, one, the amount of fun you have, and also the friendships that are made that just last forever.
Again, kind of corny.
No,
but
hey,
we love
lean
corny.
into it. We bring the corn, bring the cheese. We're all here for it.
All good.
Again, right?
It's true.
I mean,
Yeah.
I remember some of my times in high school, and I can tell you one play I made in Little League football or baseball, but I can tell you vivid memories of going to those pizza joints after the plays and having sleepovers and having parties after a game.
Yeah.
I can remember details of all that. And that's, to me,
100%.
is what you want to try to create more than anything, at least at that level. I get at some point there's a dedication and commitment and responsibility factor, and all that comes into play. But I think the memories never go away.
You mentioned that. Go ahead, Marie.
I was just going to comment. It is a little funny, though, when you are growing up and you think it is like everything, like the game, this Friday night game, is this going to make or break my whole life? If we don't win this, it's over. And then now, looking back, and you're like, how silly. And I think that's an important message, because I do think in youth sports today, we are so focused and driven on results and winning and what accomplishments can we get to. And at the end of the day, yes, there is a time and place for that, but the vast majority of kids are going to remember the social aspects, the team culture you created, the memories that you made off the field or ice or pool or whatever it might be. So I was just wanting to lean into the corn for my own side as well, the corniness. So
we're all here for it.
Let me jump on that, Marie, if I can.
Yeah.
So,
please.
And I'll hammer that point home with an exclamation point. In swimming, you can break records as an age group. Right? You can break a national record as an 11 or 12-year-old, as a 13, 14-year-old, as a 15, 16-year-old, and you can break a national record as a 10 and under. Like there's the 9 or 10-year-old out there that has the national record in the 50 breaststroke. But there's never been a national age group record holder at 10 and under ever make an Olympic team. So the point there, think about that. The point there is, doesn't matter how good you are at 9 years old, because it will have no bearing historically in my sport on how if you're going to go to the Olympics or not. So parents are always standing next to their 9-year-old kid asking, hey, when should they start swimming doubles? When should they start swimming in the morning? And I'm thinking, dudes, guys, we want this kid to be swimming at 21. We don't want him burned out by the time he's 13. Let him have fun. Go swim relays and go twice a week, and then go to baseball twice a week. Yeah. Don't take it seriously at that age. Yes, there's a point where you need to make those decisions if you want to commit, but not at 9 or 10 years old.
I'm really happy you brought that up too. That's something that we talk about quite a bit, of the importance of not specializing too early. And those kind of statistics too are just really key in hammering it home for parents. Like that's not the time. This is the time for them to learn. This is the time for them to have fun. This is the time for them to try a whole bunch of sports. And then we can talk about specialization once we find out what they really like to do, number one, and two, really what they want to like excel at and be better at themselves. And I imagine you see this a bunch when the Olympics come around every 4 years, because swimming, like other sports, get that big resurgence. They get the big surge of athletes that come in and want to try out for or join organizations or clubs or teams. And I know that as somebody who was affected by the Michael Phelps effect of seeing him like swim and being a little kid in Great Falls, Montana, going, I am going to swim now. This is just going to happen. And I'd never swum any kind of competitively before. And it's humbling. It's very humbling to go in and be, okay, so I can't keep up with anyone. I'm going to wear flippers and try to keep up, I guess. But that kind of work helps out. And going with it with the perspective of not being easily frustrated by the way, I'm curious if you can talk about how orgs can handle those surges of growth and popularity and retain those members far beyond the initial inspiration.
Yeah, I mean, I've never had those inspiring moments as a kid. My first inspiring moment was watching the 1976 Olympics. And that was, to me, the greatest men's Olympic team in history, and really the greatest women's team, because we just got beat by a bunch of cheaters in the East Germans. But really, that was sort of my, wow, this is so cool. It was the summer after my junior year. And when you talk about great moments, I think kids can be inspired by different ways and different means. Sometimes it's through their parents, sometimes it's through their peers, and sometimes it's through watching great athletes on television. And for me, like you with Michael Phelps, for me, it was Bruce Furness and John Neighbor and Jim Montgomery, names that you guys aren't going to know. People my age will know them, but all Olympic gold medalists, John Heakin. I can tell you every single swimmer on that 1976 Olympic team and what they did and what they won and what their time was. That shows you how much I know about that. And so weird, guys, I get nervous every time I'm around him. I mean, John Neighbor won 4 gold medals at those Olympics. And he was really one of my mentors in broadcasting. Yeah. I started broadcasting at the very beginning with John. And so he's a very dear friend. We communicate all the time. But when I get around him, I still get nervous. Because I think, oh my gosh, this
it's just
is my
like a
hero.
little, yeah.
Hey, it shows you care. Shows you care, man.
Little kid. Yeah, man. It's weird. But I know I'm probably not answering your question directly, but I do think that inspiration comes from all kinds of different avenues. Yeah. And heck, I'm inspired by Michael Phelps.
Yeah, it's hard not to be.
Hard not to be, yeah.
I mean, I have this as a great barroom argument, but I think he's the greatest, certainly the greatest Olympian in history. You can't, 23 Olympic gold medals. Yeah. He has 14 more gold medals than the next closest Olympian. He has 23, the next is 9. So it's not, it's close, right?
Yeah.
You had to be the guy with 9 gold medals. I have 9.
I am
good.
second.
He's got 28, whatever it is. Good job with your 9.
Right. And 28 total, which is 9 more than anybody else. And so he's certainly on my Mount Rushmore of greatest athletes in history as well. And then again, I'm a little biased, but he's number 1 in my book. But if he's not number 1, he should be on the Mount Rushmore. So again, digressing, but you mentioned Michael's name. So
but
he was not a national age group record holder at 10 and under.
Yeah, I love that those stats about the 10 and under. I feel like it would be super interesting if more sports had like records or some type of like. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm sure there's like national teams that people can make at younger ages, and I would love to know the stats of how many of those kids at certain ages actually make it to the top, because even that number is just it can't be that high. By the numbers, it can't be that high. But I also imagine. Which it's also like not a bad thing to strive for those things, but
you make a good point, Rick, because I think they did that. I was watching the Little League World Series a couple years ago, but they had mentioned the number of players from Little League World Series champions that went on to play Major League Baseball, and it's a very small number. There are some, there's no doubt, and there's some amazing ones. Yep. But it's the percentage, from a percentage standpoint, it's very small.
Yeah, we're gonna write this down, Simon, and do a little project.
Do a little dive, yeah. I think
exactly. So. Yeah.
If I can pull back to the sort of surge and resurgence of swimming, and I think one thing, at least from my experience, is like I had all that enthusiasm going in, and one thing that an org did that was really helpful was sit me down after I did my first couple laps and said, "Here's the deal. Here's what's going to happen. You aren't at your age level yet. You're not going to be swimming with them. And that's okay, because this is difficult. This is hard." And they've laid out the plan of how they're going to get me to that level. That helped me stay. That helped me continue to swim rather than just be easily frustrated or embarrassed by having to wear flippers to keep up with teammates. I know that's hopefully a best practice across the board for any organization of being able to do an assessment for anybody new to their sport, whatever sport it is. I'm curious, what other things can an organization do to retain those kind of members that are just coming in fresh off of just being excited and enthused about swimming in general or any other sport?
I do think that even at a young age, I think goal setting is important. And in our sport, I say fortunately, some people might think unfortunately, but in my sport, fortunately, it's very black and white, meaning the clock is what you're judged on. You don't get judged on beauty or how pretty your stroke is. It's whoever touches the wall first in the clock. And really, it's based on practice times, or your practices are based on learning the clock and doing sets and stuff like that. Eventually, not again as an 8-9-year-old, but eventually the clock becomes your best friend. But setting goals can be very important for a youngster in setting goals for whatever they think is important to them at that time, which might mean I want to go third in my lane instead of fourth. So I want to make 3 practices a week instead of 2. I want to make a relay for this next meet. I want to make a qualifying time to make the double A meet, not the single A meet, whatever. So I think goal setting is very important, and it should start at an early age. But I've always felt, and I was taught this by my coach, who was my college coach and my Olympic coach, Richard Quick, who was really the biggest mentor of my life. And those goals have to be reasonable, attainable, and practical. And for an 8 or 9-year-old especially.
Yeah.
I mean, you can always have that goal. Hey, I want to be an Olympian one day. That's great. Just I want to be a doctor one day when you're a kid. But the reality behind it is we need to keep those goals very practical for them to be able to make on a daily basis, because you don't want that disappointment to set in at an early age.
100%.
Yeah. I feel like it can be hard to get kids, especially they do have the goal and dream of, well, I want to be an Olympian, or I want to be a professional X sports player. And it's great to have those ambitions, but also I do think there is a degree in, as a coach or as like an admin, and to ask the questions of kids of, okay, but what can we focus on that you can actually accomplish? And kind of creating that sense of, okay, I'm succeeding, even if it's not scoring goals or hitting my time. I'm succeeding because I made other goals. I wanted to pass the ball well, or I wanted to do work more on my stroke or perfect it in this way. And so I think it is really important to remind kids that goals should not just be results. They should be more than just that.
Yeah.
So, I could talk about that for forever.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I think technique is important to teach at a young age. And I think that should be a definite goal. And that can be technique in any sport. Obviously in swimming, it's critical, but technique is really involved in almost every aspect of sport. And that can be a great goal to set. And really, that's when I tell coaches, when they ask me about these 12 and unders and what they should be doing, I tell them 2 things: fun and technique. Those are the only things you should be worrying about with those kids. And fun being first, technique being second.
Yeah. I can attest that. Well, first of all, let me set the context. I'm an awful swimmer. I cannot drown in any body of water, but I went to swim lessons when I was 5. We were walking around in a circle. They said, okay, drop into the pool. I ran out crying, and that was the extent of my swimming career. So beginning and end there. So I'm coming at this with zero ability. Right. But yeah, I would say the technique of swimming is absolutely crazy. I see them do it in the pool. I'm in a pool. I'll try to do like one of the strokes. Just try to figure it out. It's just like flopping in the water everywhere. It's unbelievable. And I just have so much respect for the sport of swimming. It is so impressive. It's also the level of athleticism that you need to try swimming down and back in your next pool, dear listener. And then you will know
then try a different stroke. Yeah. There should be a series of people attempting the butterfly for their first time.
That's
ever. And that's it. Like, like seeing them. What? How do I do this?
Can I tell a quick story about that?
Yes,
That
100%.
that it's very quick. It's very quick. So I went to school at Auburn and I do a swim camp in the summer. And gosh, this was 10 or 15 years ago. But the little kid, he was probably 12 years old, 13, he just got, well, he had to be a little older because he had just gotten to high school. And he said, people tease me. He raised his hand and said, people tease me because I'm a swimmer. They say that swimming's not really a sport.
Oh.
And so I got into the weeds with it, and I found out specifically it had come from a baseball player on that high school baseball team. So I called the baseball coach and said, listen,
I love this.
Let's fix this. I want to gain respect between the two sports. Why don't I have my swimmer go to your baseball practice one day and your baseball practice player come to my swimmer's practice one day? We'll just trade places just to kind of see what happens.
Easy.
And it was great. He thought it was a great idea. Anyway, long story short, the swimmer goes to baseball practice, runs around the field a little bit, hits some fly balls. Said, man, this is awesome. So the baseball player goes to swim practice, swims 2 lengths to the pool, pukes in the gutter, and gets out of the pool. So there's certainly an amount of respect. And from that point on, those 2 kids actually became friends and the respect was there.
That's great.
That's amazing. We could kind of dive in deeper. I didn't mean to do a pun there, but we could like kind of talk really more about like the beauty of grace that comes with swimming and how like you could have the prettiest form in the world, but it doesn't matter because the clock doesn't lie. I'm curious if kind of transitioning from the Olympic career to broadcasting, and I'm sure I'm not the first and definitely won't be the last person to say you're the voice of swimming. What does that feel just in general?
It's a huge blessing. I mean, the very first broadcasting I ever did was this thing called Battle of the Corporate Stars on ESPN. That network had nobody ever heard of in like 1985. And that just kind of led from one thing to another. I did the triple cast in 1992, which was way ahead of its time. It was an NBC property. Mm-hmm. We had the red, white, and blue channel, and I just did the triple cast. I didn't do the over the air. And then, but that gave me a lot of great experience. And then from 96 on, I've done it. I'll be doing my 9th Olympic Games in Paris and my 8th with Dan Hicks, my partner, longer than any other duo in history, which is awesome. And I just feel very blessed because I love swimming and I love talking about it. And I love just being a part of the sport. It has given me a lot more than I could ever dream about giving it. And it changed my life. And I don't ever forget that when I broadcast, and the fact that I try to tell these stories of these kids who, man, they go through a lot. Most swimmers, again, I'm just speaking of my sport, but really this is most Olympic sports, not all of them, but most Olympic sports. The average kid training for the Olympics makes minimum wage. They're just struggling to survive while they're doing it for the love of their sport. They're not going to get rich from it. Not all. I mean, Katie Ledecky's rich. Michael Phelps is rich. I get that. And there's certain
deservingly
swimmers
so.
Certain swimmers that make good living. But but I do love swimming and I love talking about it. And I feel very blessed. I've called every single one of Michael's races and Katie's races, and we've lived through, I think, of the golden era of swimming in the last 20 years because Michael's the greatest male swimmer in history, and Katie's the greatest female swimmer in history, which is pretty cool to be able to say on my tombstone that I got to call their races, among many other amazing athletes, both American and international.
Yeah, I feel like we do have to ask before we move on to probably asking you about what you're excited about for the upcoming Olympics. But I feel like I have so many, and I genuinely do think because of your guys' calling, that's really the swimming is incredible, but it amplifies the experience of watching it at home. You feel like you're there. You're so into it. You guys are so into it. So it's an awesome experience to watch. So I'll say that. But for you, what I'm sure you have a whole list of memorable swims that you've called, but do you have a personal favorite, maybe for whatever reason? I know there's a ton, like in my head, the one that I always go back to is the relay with Michael Phelps, where they were behind and they came back at the end, and just the energy of that was incredible. But do you have a favorite call that you've had in past Olympics?
That one. There's no doubt. No doubt.
Okay.
It's the greatest race in Olympic history.
Yeah.
That is major league for me. the top of Mount Rushmore. It's the greatest race in history. They did an hour-and-a-half movie on a 3-minute race. That's how great of a race it is.
Yeah. I have chills right now just thinking about
2008, for people that don't remember, 2008, Beijing, 400 free relay. Michael led it off, as you said. Jason Lezak anchored in what is still 15 years later, the fastest split in history. And there's a million reasons. I won't go into the weeds with it, but it really was the greatest race. I mean, I have a lot of other wonderful memories of other great races. Katie Ledecky's first gold medal in 2012 at 15 was really cool. Dating back to 92, Summer Sanders winning the 200 butterfly. I mean, races a lot of people in this audience might not remember. Missy Hyman, who won it in 2000, big upset there. A couple relays. Michael's 100 butterfly in Beijing when he won by 1/100th of a second.
Oh yeah, I mean, that vividly really remember cool. That one.
I'm always a big fan of all the 100 freestyles that the Americans win, because that race specifically has a lot of great historical context for the United States, dating back to Johnny Weissmuller, who was Tarzan, Duke Hanamoku from Hawaii, Buster Crabbe, who played It Was a Movie Star, Don Scholander, Jim Montgomery, Mark Spitz, and Nathan Adrian, Caleb Dressel. They all won the 100 freestyle as Americans, so that was the one that I won. So that one always, from when Nathan won and Caleb, certainly stand out in my mind too.
That question I asked our team here at Sports Engineering. We have a software platform dedicated towards swim orgs and swimming schools. And I asked them, letting them know that we're going to be interviewing you, and they had some questions. And that was the number one. The number one was, what is the most memorable swim that he's called? I do want to kind of like get to the three others, and shout out to Sarah and Liz and the other Liz for sending these over. Does it ever get old watching world-class swimmers?
No, are you kidding me, dude?
Softball.
Dude, I could go to a 10 and under country club league meet and sit in the stands and not get bored.
Love it.
I never get bored watching swimming.
Not ever. Even the really long one.
No,
the really long race.
I'll sit through that 1500 and take splits.
You know what I love about watching that? I love watching the people in the pool that are like pushing the lap number down. Yeah, I like watching them. It's just the full experience on that one.
Yeah, no, count strokes and see if they change stroke. I mean, I'm such a nerd. I am like pitiful. I'm really pitiful, very pitiful.
No, not at all. I'm going to talk you out of that, because it's a testament to, if you want to be great, or really just be great at any sport, you need to be an absolute student of the game, whatever it is. So being a student of the game is a huge part of it. And I would imagine that you take any professional athlete today and ask them the history of the sport, they'll be able to talk your ear off for more than the allotted time that they're allowed. So I appreciate that about you, Rowdy. It's amazing to see somebody be such a huge student and advocate to be a student of their sport. A couple other questions here. What race are you most proud of? Another question from our team.
From my perspective, like from the race I swam?
From your perspective.
Race. Now, obviously, the obvious answer is the 100 freestyle in LA in 1984, because that's the one individual event that I won. I was on 2 relays at one. But really the one that I guess I think about it again, back to what we talked about earlier, about the one that creates the most memories for me is winning the 200 freestyle my senior year in high school.
Nice.
I don't know why, but that one sticks out in my mind, not for the importance of it, obviously, but for what it meant to me, and as it was a precursor to what my career was going to be all about, that I was able to literally, from that race, might be able to walk onto a university to getting a full scholarship just from one race. And that, I mean, if I had not done that, then I might have ended up at a more minor university and not at Auburn, where I think I reached my full potential and met my coach, who I think about all the time. We lost him about 10 years ago, but I think it could have been a completely different scenario if I didn't have that one race.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the one I think about. The 100 free wasn't bad at the Olympics. I will give you
Winning
that.
the gold wasn't too shabby, but
Between the
It
two,
wasn't
yeah.
too shabby, no.
Turning point of your life,
Whole life.
and winning
Yeah.
a gold medal. I mean, yeah, toss up. The other one that we had here, and again, shout out to the team here at Sports Engine, because they are about what they're about. They're former swimmers, collegiate swimmers, coaches today. They're amazing. How has your athletic career impacted your kids' involvement in sports?
Has impacted my kids' moments.
Your kids' involvement in sports. How's it impacted?
Well, that's where I think for me, I'm a bit disappointed in myself that I didn't get my kids involved in swimming as much as I should have. My wife was always really good at inspiring and motivating my kids to do extracurricular activities. And I think that's one area of my life that I certainly have regrets that I didn't, not necessarily shove. There's a fine line being a parent in nudging and shoving, right?
Yeah.
I was always a little too much below the nudge side even, and I should have done a lot more about that. But my kids did great in so many other activities because of my wife. They were in band and played soccer and did all kind of drama club, but they did all kinds of great extracurricular activities, which I was always very proud of. But none of them really swam. They all swam here and there. My oldest swam in high school, and they all tried out for swimming at one point or another. But it was tough. It was kind of tough on them. They just didn't like it very much. I think one of my kids at one point said, "I'd rather eat dirt than swim." Also, but they all swam. They all learned how to swim. I think my wife and I were really big believers in having them learn how to swim at an early age, because I worked for a great foundation now called Step Into Swim, and one of our goals is to try to preach the gospel, putting your children in swim lessons, because drowning is such an epidemic in our country. It's the number one cause of death in children ages 1 to 4, number 2 for 5 to 14. So we certainly encourage parents to put their children in swim lessons. And fortunately, my wife was able to get our kids to learn how to swim at an early age, which was awesome.
Yeah. Even if they cry, bring them back to the next day.
Even if they cried.
Bring them back to the next day. I'll let my mom know after this. I'll shoot her a text.
The tears.
I'll tell her, Rowdy told me. I can swim, so we're good.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're running close on time here, so I'm going to ask you one final question, then we'll get to the last part of this. Obviously, we've got the Olympics, Paris 2024. You're going to be there. Swimming is going to be at center stage, as it always is and as it should be. What would you say are you most excited for, or what do you think people can expect at the 2024 games for the sport of swimming for the U.S.?
Well, we're going to have a great team again. I mean, and I can say we with you guys, but when I'm on the broadcast, it's the U.S.
That's true.
I can't do that.
Yes.
But
it's good here.
But the U.S. has been number one in the world of swimming since 1956. Right? I mean,
it's incredible.
67 years. No other sport, no other team, obviously, can claim that kind of excellence year in and year out. So, yes, the U.S. is going to be number one again next summer. But it's going to be a little tricky because there's a lot of great international swimmers out there. The Australian women are amazing. There's this kid from France swimming in his home country named Leon Marchand. You don't know him now, but you're going to know a lot about him next summer. But I think from the United States perspective, our women's team is incredible. Our men's team is young, might be a little too young to dominate. They're still going to win the most medals to dominate next summer. But there's some young kids that in LA in 2028, when you ask me this question again in 4 years, I'm going to say, oh my gosh, our men's team is going to be unbelievable. Having said all that, there are some really good individual swimmers still kind of waiting to see if Caleb Dressel can come back. Katie Ledecky is going to be awesome. We've got two great coaches, Anthony Nesty and Todd DeSorbo, leading the charge. So I think all in all, Team USA is going to be in good shape for swimming.
That's awesome. I'm
amped
very
up,
excited. Yeah, I'm equally as amped and very excited. I can't wait. Cannot wait for Paris 2024, as I'm sure you can't either. And we are going to move into our finale here, our final segment. This is This or That. This is 9 rapid fire questions.
Okay.
And we need just rapid fire answers.
Okay.
No thinking involved. You ready to go?
I'm ready.
Of course you are.
Take your mark.
He's ready.
Swimmer's ready.
Swimmer's ready.
Take your mark.
I got you got odds, you got evens, or what do you want to do, Mary?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Coffee or tea?
Coke. Neither
C.
one.
Option C.
Love it.
All right, cats or dogs?
Cats. Used to be dogs, now cats.
Beach vacation or mountain retreat?
Vacation.
Right on. All right, is it pronounced GIF or GIF?
GIF.
Pizza or sushi?
Sushi.
Morning swim or evening swim?
Evening swim.
All right, for the events, sprint or long distance?
Sprint. There's no such thing as long distance.
Well,
The long one
kidding.
with the thing. Everything's long
Yeah.
distance
Fourth.
for me. Even one lap, long distance. All right, pre-race routine. Are you doing pump up music or quiet focus?
Pump up music.
Maybe even before broadcast.
quick-
Are you doing?
I was going to say quick bonus. Yeah, quick bonus. What's the music you're listening to?
There is only one music, really. Beatles.
We love it.
Oh.
Is there anybody else that's an artist out there? I don't know of another artist.
I think it's
I
like the
only know
Beatles and Queen. That's it.
George Paul, George and Ringo. I mean, George Paul. John Paul, George and Ringo are the only ones out there, right?
Yeah. It's Beatles.
I'm obsessed with the Beatles, so.
It's Beatles and then people who have been obsessed or who have been influenced by the Beatles. I'm pretty sure those are the categories.
That's the yeah.
And then, all right, last one here. Build your dream all-time relay lineup.
Oh my gosh, all-time dream relay lineup would be. Oh my gosh, that's a good one. Jason Lezak. I got to put him on the relay. Michael Phelps. I have to put him on the relay. Simone Manuel. I'd have to put her on the relay. She was amazing. And Shirley Babashoff.
All right.
You don't know him. You don't know. You don't know Shirley Babashoff.
But we have an amazing producer in Joe Brzonik and Kelsey Irwin who are more than happy to Google all those names for us. So
listen, we know now,
in the show
and
notes.
we trust your judgment. So I'm good with that.
Yeah.
If I'm ever asked that question, I'm gonna say that. So
memorize that for sure.
You're going to get a different answer each time.
that's all right.
Rowdy, a couple things here before we wrap up. One, thank you. Thank you for hopping on and being on the show and giving us that time. We know that you're busy and we're looking forward to hearing your voice again in Paris 2024. And the last question, my own little question, I just wanted to ask you one more. I'm so sorry. Have you ever thought about just outsourcing your enthusiasm to like a mundane activity like someone mowing their lawn? Would you be interested in just doing that?
That's a long story, my man, that actually the answer is kind of, sort of. I'll have to explain it to you one day. But I've been approached about that, and we're actually going to do that with some swim races. We're actually going to be Jason Lezak and I have invested in a company that we're going to provide voiceover for swim races. Not somebody mowing the lawn, but
amazing,
little kids
cool.
swimming.
If I could
is really
if
cool.
I could have your enthusiasm for even just like tying my shoes, man, I would just take on the day with with so much energy.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. That means a lot. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Rowdy.
Thank you, guys.
Taking the time. This has been a blast. We will talk soon.
Okay, sounds good. Take care. Bye.
All right.
Hey.
I mean, Rowdy Gaines. He was everything and more.
When your name is Rowdy, you can't bring little energy. You can't.
He brought it.
Yes.
And he was fantastic. So interesting. The man knows nearly everything about swimming, Olympics. He called himself a nerd a few times, which I appreciated. And yeah, I mean, I think especially for me, listen, I didn't grow up a swimmer. I told a story. I exposed myself. I got vulnerable with Mr. Rowdy Gaines. I'm not a swimmer, but I do I respect the sport so much. And I do love that here at Sports Engine. It's like swimming is really in our fabric. Yeah. are a swimming company, and like a lot of what we do and our customers, they're a huge part of what makes us who we are. And so it's cool to kind of get to spotlight swimming in such a deep way. Rowdy was the perfect person to celebrate swimming and all of its amazingness. So
it's been the foundation for a platform that's going to be really helpful and taken off for a lot of organizations here in 2024. But 10 plus years, we've had this amazing product with Team Unify, and it's really fun to be a part of that and to have that culture too, the employees, part of that growth. And
we have some like really good swimmers.
Yeah, crazy good swimmers.
And like good like coaches, and it's really cool.
So it's amazing to see them kind of take that passion for their sport and put it in this of making it easier for swim orgs.
Yeah.
So it's really cool to see it. Yeah. Swimming is very deeply ingrained in Sports Engine, and we're very thankful for that.
100%. And yeah, Rowdy was great. I could have talked to him for another hour. I was really hoping he would do a reenactment of one of his famous commentating, but alas, you'll have to just tune in to the Paris games, to the swimming events that are happening. I think we're going to see some really good races, and Rowdy will only amplify the amazingness in the pool with his words that he always delivers on. But
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Fantastic guest. Would recommend.
Highly recommend.
Would recommend to a friend.
Would listen to again.
Would listen to again. So why don't you guys just rewind and listen again?
Yeah, just dive back in again. And with that, let's tie a bow on this, because this has been another episode of For the Love of Sport, brought to you by Sports Engine, the home of U Sports.
In fact, it is. And if you have questions...
I just checked. It is.
I just confirmed with our producer. Yes, the home of U Sports. If you have questions, comments, if someone who would be a good guest on the show, or if you have a query, as my friend Simon would like to call it, please reach out to us on any of our social channels, or you can always reach out via email at ftlospod@nbcuni.com. We'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely.
Producers,
big shout out
Kelsey
to Joe and Kelsey, our producers, for making this show happen week in, week out. Can't do it without them. And also can't do it without the wonderful, the amazing, the always professional and historian of his craft, Troy Stone.
We will be back with our final episode of 2023, a holiday episode. Very fun.
Yeah.
We're going to get Kelsey and Joe are actually going to make an appearance on the pod. So for those people who been curious about our producers, listen to the next episode. Maybe Simon and I are going to be on the hot seat. Who knows what's going to happen?
We don't know.
Things are going to get crazy. So tune in.
It'll be a fun episode.
Well, until then, bye.
Bye, everybody.